Hello everybody, thanks a lot for joining. As you know, this is the second session of a series of workshops about the unconscious mind. In our last session, we had an introduction on why psychoanalysis is a great tool and how it works. Today, we will dive into the cornerstone of psychoanalysis, the interpretation of dreams. It is a huge topic and we will dedicate at least 2 or 3 sessions, I will see. If you have any questions, please make a note and I will answer them in the chat. Today, we are going to explore how, after interpretation, all dreams are wish fulfillment. We will see that with an example, the dream of Irma. And finally, we will apply the method that we explored on the first session of interpretation construction to dreams to try to understand it a bit better. Let's start. In 1900, Freud wrote The Interpretation of Dreams. This work is key for psychoanalysis. It is the first time Freud described the concept of unconscious mind. The method of interpretation and the technique of free association in transference that we saw in the previous session derives from the concept of unconscious mind. You will understand this later. With the interpretation of dreams, psychoanalysis was born as a science. Nothing is random in the interpretation of dreams, nor in the analysis of patients. It follows a method and a technique. Freud was a doctor, a neurologist, so why would he be interested in studying the dreams? He was widely criticized by the doctors and scientists of his time. Other scientists or science were not interested at all in dreams and considered them meaningless and random. In that sense, even when he was a doctor, he was closer to lore, to traditional wisdom. In what sense? Traditional wisdom historically believed that dreams had meaning. In the past, Pharaoh would even have dreams interpreters. I bet you have heard of them. He was closer to lore than to scientists of that time, but he brought the scientific method of interpretation. Psychoanalysis has been historically accused of being unscientific. Before we continue, and without going in too much detail, let me give you some quick notions of epistemology, which is the theory of knowledge, to prove wrong that criticism. All science needs to have a method. That is a requirement to be considered science. If they don't have method, they cannot be considered science. The method derives from the object of knowledge. In case of psychoanalysis, the unconscious mind. The object of knowledge of a science is the object we are trying to understand, we are studying. For example, in the case of biology, would be the body. Things are already complicated enough, so you might be wondering, why am I telling you all this? Because with the interpretation of dreams, psychoanalysis was born as a science and Freud established its method of interpretation construction. Remember, we saw this in the previous session. Interpretation construction because the unconscious mind is nowhere. It has to be built in the session. And why dreams? Do you remember? Why did Freud choose dreams? Because he had discovered the unconscious mind. So, to prove and generalize the theory, he chose dreams because we all dream, healthy and sick individuals. So everybody has this mechanism. Let's go a bit further. Freud proved that dreams have meaning. The interpretation of dreams has a lot of examples of dreams, some of them very complex. So I warn you, it is difficult to compress everything in such a short time, even if we dedicated 3 sessions. Freud used dreams of himself, as he was an average normal individual, but also dreams of patients and friends to prove that dreams can be interpreted for everybody and the meaning of a dream is unconscious wish fulfillment. Himself was shocked with his discovery and he wondered, is it true that all dreams are wish fulfillment? What if they are fears or forecast of the future? Once a friend told to Freud, look Freud, I have dreamt that I'm going on holidays with my mother-in-law. How is it possible that that is wish fulfillment? A bit of a joke. Freud continued studying the dreams and he had to conclude that all dreams are wish fulfillment, even the ones that seem to be annoying, sad, or traumatic, like the death of a loved one. We will see this deeper in our next session of the typical dreams. Again, after interpretation, all dreams have a meaning, and that meaning is wish fulfillment. That meaning is linked to the psychic life of the patient. Why have I highlighted after interpretation? Because the same dream told by a different person would have a different meaning. So no, and this is a question that I get a lot. You cannot use a dictionary of symbols to translate and interpret your own dreams. Why? Because in order to interpret a dream, we need the patient to talk. Let's see this with an example. I'm going to use a dream of Freud, which is called Dream of Irma. As background, I would tell you that most of dreams have memories of the previous day. They are called day residues. You might have noticed this in your own dreams. These memories do not provoke the dream. The dream uses them to express the unconscious desire. What is then the real engine of the dream? It is the unconscious desire. And we will talk about this because it's a really very big topic in coming sessions when we explore the Oedipus complex. As you can see, all the concepts are intertwined. This is why you need to continue listening without having understood everything. So, the real engine of the dream is the unconscious desire, but we are going to see that it's not any desire. For now, let's bear in mind that it's an unconscious desire. So that you understand the dream we are going to analyze, I'm going to give you some facts. What I'm going to tell you now actually happened. Irma was a friend of Freud and also a friend of the family. Freud took also the chance to explain in his dream how it is more difficult to treat someone with who you have a personal connection. Irma was also seeing a physician who was working on the case with Freud. She had had some psychoanalysis sessions, but before summer, she dropped the treatment. Freud was very annoyed because she no longer had the anxiety, but she still had some symptoms. In summer, Freud met Otto, who was also a friend with Irma, and asked him, "Have you seen Irma?" And he said, "Yes, she is okay, but not fully recovered, to be honest." That evening, Freud wrote the clinical letter of Irma to the doctor he was working with. Let's see now what was the actual dream of Freud. This is the dream. They were in a big hall. Freud organized a party, and Irma was one of the people who had been invited. Freud approached her and told her, "If you have pain, it is your fault, your own fault." Irma began to complain about some sore throat, stomachache. Freud took her to the window where he could examine her. He asked her to open her mouth. He thinks he has seen some white plaques on her throat. The doctor, who is also treating Irma, is also in the party. He goes to Irma and examines her. He turned to Freud and told him, "Don't worry, she has an infection, she will get dysentery, and all the symptoms will clear off." This is happening because Otto gave her an injection and it was dirty. What is the meaning of this dream of Freud? What is the wish which is being fulfilled? In his dream, Freud is taking revenge against Irma for having left the treatment when she was getting better, Otto for having made that comment, "It is okay, but not fully recovered," and the doctor itself because he could not believe that the symptoms could have a psychical root. As you can see, after interpretation, we realize that the objective of this dream is to prove that Freud is not guilty and to exonerate him of Irma ailment. Very efficient, no? What Freud is doing while he is sleeping. Okay, so he is not guilty because she has something organic. He is not guilty because it is dysentery, and that is something I cannot cause with psychoanalysis treatment. And he is not guilty because it has been Otto who had given her an injection, and because of that, she got an infection. All these reasons are contradictory and nonsense, but they all contribute to fulfill Freud's wish. "I'm not guilty of Irma ailment." He is exonerated. Unconscious mind is to fulfill a wish. In this case, in his dream of Freud, I'm not guilty of Irma's ailment. This is how the unconscious mind works. So you can have a dream, you can crack a joke, or you can have a symptom. The unconscious mind does not really care. He just wants to show up. But you do care. You prefer to crack a joke than to have a symptom. I hope you have understood that behind a dream, there is an unconscious wish which is fulfilled. We will need a lot more time to explain how you actually do that interpretation. It is very complex. Interpreting a dream is super hard work. Why? Because, believe it or not, when interpreting a dream, nothing is random. Freud dedicated a lot of time, years, and effort to write his masterpiece, Interpretation of Dreams. So that you understand a bit why I say nothing is random, I'm going to give you, I hope, a simple example. I'm sure you have had dreams in which you see someone's face, but then you are not sure if it's that person or it's someone else. You thought it was your father, but in reality, then it was a friend, or it was your father, but in reality, your father doesn't have those eyes. Those examples are cases of what we call in psychoanalysis condensation and displacement. In the example of dream of Irma, Freud saw the image of Irma, but she did not look exactly as Irma. She looked paler, like his wife, and also more energetic, like a friend of Irma's who was also Freud's patient. I know this is confusing. It is just to show you how in dreams, every detail counts and is explained. So, in Freud's dream, when he sees Irma, he sees an image which overlaps three women: Irma, Irma's friends, and Freud's wife. Why do these three women appear in one image? Because there is an unconscious link among them. What is the unconscious link? They all have disobeyed Freud at some stage. This is also a very good example to show why you can't use a dictionary of symbols that you find on internet to interpret a dream. The only way in which we could find out about that unconscious link amongst those three women is by listening to the person, in this case Freud, talking about his dream. We would need to ask the patient to associate freely to discover that unconscious link. The dream is related to the psychic life of the patient. I hope you now can have an idea of how difficult but accurate is to interpret a dream. Let's keep going, and remember to try to continue listening. I know it's not easy. You might not notice, but another feature of psychoanalysis is that what matters is what the patient says. We can't open his head and watch the dream he had. The psychoanalyst works on what the patient tells about the dream, his speech. From the dream he tells, the psychoanalyst interpret his unconscious desire. In our example, the wish of being exonerated from Irma's ailment. Let's see it with graphics. The patient in the sessions tells a dream. The psychoanalyst will ask him questions about the dream so he can get more information about events, feelings, memories, which could be unconsciously related to that dream. The psychoanalyst, using the rules of the unconscious mind theory, interprets the unconscious desire behind that dream that the patient has told. Boom. Only then we can find out what was the wish behind that dream. Let's see now the other way around. This time we start in the unconscious mind. There are, as we have seen, some unconscious operators. We have seen the condensation. The objective of these operators is to dress the unconscious desire up so that the censorship cannot recognize it, and hence it can access the conscious. The energy linked to a desire is transferred to indifferent and insignificant representations so that they can access the consciousness. We will see at a later stage, but it's because of the censorship and repression. This is exactly the unconscious work that happens in dreams and symptoms, and this is why the dream looks crazy and random, most of times so different from our desire, to the point that unless a psychoanalyst interprets it, we can't know what wish is behind that dream. I'm aware today's session have been slightly shorter, but I thought it was better to leave it here. There is a lot to digest, and believe me, it's better to have clear ideas to be able to process and build up on the knowledge. So we are going to leave it here. And in our next session, we will be looking into why we have typical dreams. We will try to interpret some of them, and I promise you will understand better things we talked about today. But today's session was necessary before we go into the typical dreams that I'm sure you are going to find fascinating. We will also have a look into nightmares and its relationship with anxiety. And maybe we will start with the Oedipus complex. I will see. I will decide. So thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed it. And I wanted to thank everybody for having continued listening without understanding everything. I am aware this is a very different way of learning to what you're used to, but I promise it will be worth it. Thank you. See you next time.